Thank you, Corrie. It's a great pleasure to be here, and I'd like to thank Innovation Oz for pulling together this really stimulating discussion and gathering us together. Capability is clearly a focus of much of government policy right now, and there are a few areas where it's more important than defence. But before I get into defence, the defence mission, some of the really exciting recent developments and how you can engage and challenge us to implement some of these exciting new directions in the best way possible. I wanted to reflect that while we are subscale, while there are many things that we could wish we could wave a magic wand and change in the Australian context, one thing we have that is a huge advantage that comes in a way as a side effect of being subscale is our connectivity. And that connectivity is exhibited in events like this, where we bring together government policy makers, investors, industry leaders, entrepreneurs, innovators. And I think that this is why Defence is so proud to be one of the sponsors of this event. So for those who don't know me, I know many of the faces in the room, but not all. I'm very proud to lead Defence Science Technology Group, which as the capability manager for innovation, science and technology within Defence. DSTG is a very proud 116-year-old organisation that has been going through a very rapid journey of transformation and change over the last few years under our More Together strategy, where we've really had to step up to how do we do the science and technology that has to be done within Defence, and roughly half of my 2,200 people work at top secret levels, which gives you some idea of the nature of the work. But how do we at the same time connect with, foster, align the extraordinary R&D capabilities in our nation to Defence's most significant problems? This has been put in stark context by the launch earlier this year of the Defence Strategic Review, which gives absolutely stark direction for how Defence must pivot to the geopolitical environment that's defined by reduced warning times, persistent targeting by state and non-state actors in the grey zone, and the ever-increasing threat of conflict in the Indo-Pacific. When that review came out in April, it had 6 initial urgent priorities, one of which is innovation. Now that may seem bloomin' obvious to this audience, but I'd like you to think that in an environment where we're being asked what capability can we offer to government as choices if there was conflict that we are drawn into or where we need to defend our interests or work with our allies, the natural tendency is to go to what do we have now and what can we buy today. So the fact that innovation is right there as one of those top 6 is important, and we should not take it for granted. In addition, the DSR gave us 6 priorities for the national innovation, science and technology ecosystem. And to give them to you, in case they're not front and central for you as they are for me, hypersonics, which was touched on in the brilliant former panel there, and it's great to see some of our startups really starting to make inroads there. We need more in this area because we have huge opportunities. Directed energy, and I know we've got a panel in a moment that'll talk to directed energy. Trusted autonomy in all domains, quantum technologies, where we undoubtedly have edge in a number of areas, information warfare and long-range fires. And one thing that characterises almost all of those 6 that I just read to you is that it's not just about doing the incremental R&D and incremental innovation required to update systems on our platforms, but that done right, they will create leap ahead. They'll create capabilities that will displace things that we currently do today. For example, directed energy provides infinite magazine and gets rid of some of the supply and logistics issues that we have with weapons supply. So now, briefly, I'd like to introduce you to perhaps the biggest change in the defence innovation ecosystem in the last decade, which is the creation of ASCA. And if you haven't met Professor Emily Hilder, who's sitting at the back and will now stand up or wave, Emily's the head of ASCA, and what ASCA signals is a new approach to defence innovation. Central to this new approach is that while I'm the senior responsible officer for it, it's not something that sits within DSTG. It's nested in the DSTG context, so there are no barriers for ASCA to access the deep expertise of our defence scientists, but it's a one defence organisation that brings together acquisition, science, innovation, policy, and our military users, the whole system. And what it does in a nutshell is make sure that we get the highest priority problems from our warfighters, and we turn those into really clear signals to the market, and really agile processes, not for putting out grants, but for quickly acquiring what is commercial or near commercial, for engaging industry, particularly industry that's not familiar with working with defence, and that we create ways of driving cooperation rather than competition. And I really resonated with the comment that I heard a little bit earlier about the need for this system to celebrate its successes, because there are many. So within ASCA, just as an example, it kicked off in July this year, and on the 31st of July, we put out a sovereign UAS challenge to see what Australia has that could create a sovereign drone ecosystem. I was thrilled to see we got 250 odd submissions from our industry base, which showed that we have everything from complete drone systems to software and all the componentry required. And please watch this space. We'll be coming out shortly to show you what we have done with that information from the Australian system. The heart of ASCA is our missions. And missions are very much inspired by our deep cooperation with DARPA. In fact, in creating ASCA, we've worked closely with our very close colleagues in the US system to cherry pick the best elements of the Defence Innovation Unit of DARPA and the Strategic Capabilities Office, or SCO for short, to put together an approach that is distinct and tailored for Australia. We're a much smaller system. We need to make sure we pick the problems we work on to build on our niche advantage. And it's probably worth at that point just to reflect to you that we are at a moment in time where we have shifted quite fundamentally how we work with our allies. You will, of course, have heard a lot about AUKUS. Please also watch this space for some pending announcements about how ASCA will help accelerate some of the AUKUS Pillar 2 initiatives, which is extremely exciting by harnessing the innovation systems of all of our three nations. But if I reflect on the change that I've seen in nearly 5 years in defence, it's that our allies now are shifting towards enhanced mutual reliance and see what Australia does that's distinctively good. And our requirement then is to bring that into systems that then put it alongside solutions developed by those allies. And that's happening in a number of quite classified spaces at the moment. And then finally, I'll reflect on that wonderful last panel discussion. We do have an R&D challenge in our nation. We are underinvesting in fundamental R&D, and it is quite challenging for us to be able to get after our capability requirements. ASCA is a part of that solution, and under its Emerging Disruptive Technology program, we'll be investing in the long-term R&D partnerships with our nation in key areas which align with those 6 areas that I've told you about, but won't be limited to them, which will allow us to foster some of those ecosystems that were described by that last panel and allow us to help send signals out. Talking about sending signals out, we've heard very clearly from industry what they need is better clarity on defence's problems, quicker no's if they're going to get a no, and procurement rather than grants, very consistent with what you heard there. And all of that input has gone into shaping how ASCA will be working with industry. So finally, some reflection. We need to lean in on our niche advantages, the areas where we're distinctively good. We need to use that strength of connection across our system. And I couldn't agree more with Roy Green's comments about creating physical spaces and mechanisms for that to happen. And in fact, just last Friday with the Premier of South Australia, I launched Raven's Nest at Lot 14 in Adelaide, which is a combination of defence science, industry, and academic researchers working on a range of quantum sensing technologies. This, along with programs that can somehow break the shackles of organisations and help people have more mobile careers, such as Defence's Navigate program, will help people understand working in industry, working in government, working in academe, and break down some of these boundaries. So very finally, thank you for the chance to speak with you. It's a great pleasure to be here. I hope this sparks conversations and those deeper relationships. One of the things I'm driving right now is in the lead up to the release of the National Defence Strategy early next year, we will be resetting the More Together strategy to fully encompass defence innovation, science and technology, and to position us as a system to be able to accelerate the delivery of asymmetric capability. Please engage if you'd like to contribute to some of the consultation for how we land that strategy. Thank you very much.